Recording here. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time this hour that we're going to spend. I promise you that this is going to be the best hour that you spend all week. I have two people that have really influenced me over the past year on the line, Barry and Dan. I'd like to welcome you to the webinar. We call this the $1 Million Practice Recipe. And, you know, sometimes when we talk about having $1 million practice, people think that it's all about the money. And I truly believe that in the law of cause and effect, having $1 million practice is about creating enough value that people are willing to pay you out of pocket. And just being at what I would consider a pretty cool vantage point with where I am in chiropractic, having 12 members of my family that are chiropractors, being third generation, having grown up in an environment where I went to DE and Parker. You know, I'll be at CalJam next week, and I just have the opportunity now to work with 52 of our 8 Weeks to Wellness Center on an intimate basis where I'm on the phone with 5 or 10 chiropractors almost on a daily basis. So it's given me a unique perspective and advantage to see, you know, successful chiropractic offices and not so successful chiropractic offices. And I can tell you that it is achievable, it's attainable to have $1 million practice. And it's interesting, and Barry and Dan, if you remember at the one day that we did in Chicago, is one of the questions that I asked, raise your hand if you have $1 million practice. And Barry, I don't know if you remember looking around the room, but there weren't a lot of hands in the air.
No, there wasn't.
Okay. And then the next question that I asked, which is even more important to your future guys, was raise your hand if you have $1 million practice where you collect $1 million in cash. And I'm talking checks, credit cards, and people handing you cold hard cash. And guess what? I don't know if you remember this, Dan. All the hands went down in the room, right? So I want you to know that we, the people on this line, have had $1 million practices. The past 4 or 5 years, we've collected over $1 million. Sometimes, some years, $2 million. But the thing I'm most proud of is we're about 60, almost 65 to 70% cash in our practice now. So the past 3 years, we've collected over $1 million in cash. And that makes me feel pretty good at night when I put my head on the pillow to know that, guess what, people value what we do so much that they're willing to write a check, they're willing to hand out over their credit card to recognize the value that we create in their life. You know, this is something that I learned from Brad Glowacki. You know, he said that people pay you in direct proportion to the value that you create for them. So I would write that statement down, because if you're not creating value, don't expect for people to pay you hard cash. It's easy to submit a HCFA form to get paid through insurance. That's the easy part, guys. I've seen that for the last 10, 15 years ruin our profession. But if you're going to ask somebody to step up and do a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 care plan and pay out of pocket, you better have some value that you're creating for that patient through their adjustments, through their care plan, through their coaching and education. And I'm really pleased to say that there's 2 people on the line that have helped me take what we do with what we're doing with 8 Weeks to Wellness and running a wellness practice and communicate so much more effectively than we were communicating a year ago. So Barry and Dan, I want to welcome you to the webinar. But I first want to start off by saying thank you so much for just the influence that you've had over us in our practice.
Oh, you're welcome, Dane. You've influenced us quite a bit too, dude.
Good. So I have these 2 handsome guys on the line with me right now, and if you don't know Barry and Dan, they're just one of the things I love about them is there's no bullshit about these guys. They speak from their heart. They don't get involved in the politics of this profession. If they think that somebody is screwing up, they're going to let them know. If they think somebody's doing great, they're going to let them know. And one of the things, Barry and Dan, that I absolutely fell in love with about Bootcamp was role playing. And what I recognized, and it was almost like in that moment, it was a lightning bolt that came to me, that I recognized what the problem in our profession is. And the problem in our profession is that we have all of these ethereal ideas, these B-level concepts about who we want to be as a chiropractor. We think we've got it down, and then we go to communicate to our patients in our day one, in our consult, in our report of findings, in our healthcare class, in a lunch and learn outside of the office. And what comes out of our mouth isn't necessarily what we think is going to come out of our mouth. And in listening, I'm sure you guys listen to a lot of day one and day twos, but in listening to these day one and day twos, I am just blown away by the lack of proper communication skills and what it takes to, what you would call, Barry, bring people up on the ladder, where the closing part becomes the easiest part of the whole day one, day two process. So again, guys, I think you really have this mastered, and let's just jump right into this. I want to make a little disclaimer just in case anybody has their mic on or their speakers on and your children are running around the room. I would encourage you to get them out of the room immediately, put some earmuffs on them, make sure that they're not listening to this, because we are real and raw, and there may be a couple F-bombs or a couple curse words that fly out of our mouths, not on purpose. It's only because we're passionate about this, guys, and I don't know about Barry and Dan, but I am so sick and tired of seeing chiropractors suffer when we have one of the best products out there and we don't know how to sell it.
Amen, man.
All right, so let's just jump right into the content. One of the things that I presented at the one day in Chicago, and I talked to Barry and Dan about this, when I was out there lecturing and speaking, and I would ask people that question, raise your hand if you have $1 million practice, and then raise your hand if you collect $1 million in cash. I was really floored that I didn't see more hands go up, and so I sat down and said, well, what are the three critical metrics, because I truly believe, like Peter Drucker, that what gets measured gets managed. So if you don't understand what it takes to have $1 million practice, just the lack of awareness of what it takes, you're never going to reach it. And if you do, it's going to be by some accident, and you're not going to be able to sustain it. So what I've done is I've created the formula. My sister is an engineer, right? So if you know Denise, Denise is all about the numbers. Denise keeps the metrics in our practice. We manage them very closely, but it's very simple, guys. It's not simple to do, but it's simple to understand. You need to have 28 new patients a month. You need to collect $50 per office visit, and that's everything. And the way you calculate that number is you take your total collections, and this is now a perfect time to do this because we're at the end of 2012. So what I want you to do, and write this down, your OVA collected is your total collections for 2012 divided by your total patient visits. If you calculate that number, you'll come up with a number that people pay you every time they walk into your clinic, what an average person is going to pay you. And then
Dane,
yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we clear up that it's office visits, that's collected money and not services that you performed.
Without a doubt, guys. I mean, we have the chiropractic exaggeration factor, and I think a lot of people that are raising their hand, they have $1 million practice. That's services, and what I'm talking about is I want to see your bank account. I mean, have you put $1 million in your bank account? That's what we're talking about here, and again, that's no bullshit on that. That's real. And then the last number is PVA, and remember, if you're going to calculate your PVA, guys, you should do it over a year or 6-month basis because you're going to have these swings in new patients. Where it's going to throw your patient your PVA off. So if you had you did a screening, let's say, like we did last couple weeks ago, and we got 20 new patients out of it. We had an influx of new patients. That's going to throw our PVA off. So I would recommend you calculate your PVA over the year period. And if you're doing that, and Dan, I'm going to ask you this question: do you see people, because you coach people on a regular basis, do you see people that regularly see 28 new patients a month?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
yeah, more often than not. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Barry, how about collecting? Is it realistic to collect $50 per office visit?
You better be collecting 50 a visit. That's not much.
Right. And then this is a little bit harder. I think Dan and Barry would say, looking at people's PVA, having a 60 PVA is a little bit more difficult, but we're going to talk about how to increase that PVA today. But that's probably the number that I see, gets missed, the mark that gets missed the most. But I think what everybody on the line would recognize is that it's possible to have a 60 PVA. We have a 68 to 70 PVA. We've had it for, a long, long time. So this is a doable thing. So Barry or Dan, before I move on, do you want to say anything about that?
I think these three numbers are just ridiculously easy to do. And we spend our time at Bootcamp and what we're going to talk about today. It's not difficult to do these three numbers if you know what you're doing. That's the trick. But these are easy numbers.
So let's jump into that because I want to break this down even more because I think clarity is having clarity, and not only clarity in understanding the formula, but clarity in what needs to be done. And what I would like, Barry and Dan, is when people leave here, they have a page of notes of what they need to start doing immediately to start to recognize that, hey, listen, even if your goal this year isn't to have $1 million, maybe break those numbers in half and have a $500,000 practice, okay? Maybe you're $200,000 to $300,000, but let's set a goal that, every chiropractor that's on this webinar right now should have a $500,000 practice with the goal and intent to have $1 million practice one day. And I can tell you, it takes a lot of pressure off when you have $100,000 in the bank in your account and you're not worrying how to make peak payroll. All right. So Barry, I'm gonna have questions that I've picked out for this webinar, and I'm gonna ask the person that I think is best equipped to answer this question. So Barry, I'm gonna start with you with new patients. And the question,
Okay.
Barry, is why do most chiropractors struggle with new patients? And that's evidenced by the fact that the number one question in our profession when I go to seminar is how do I get more new patients?
Great question. I believe chiros struggle to get the new ones for a few reasons. It's not just one simple thing. So let me just kind of give you a rundown of what I think they are. First of all, they don't know how to get them, or they're using outdated methods. They don't have a USP or a VAP. They don't maximize every opportunity, and they don't replace their number one prospect. And then this one may sound odd, but they don't know how to close. And so those are the reasons I believe people don't have or have a difficult time getting new ones. And if it's okay with you, can I just break down each one of those to tell you, specifically what I'm talking about?
Yeah, please do, Barry.
Okay, so I'm going to combine the they don't know how with the outdated methods. So oftentimes what docs do is they spend all their time being the doc, and they don't realize that learning how to market is vital. And that's why one of the things that we did is we got into Dr. Glowacki's corporate skeleton key, because we knew that was a great way to learn how to market in a way that we could really drive people into our practice. So that's something that is really beneficial in terms of learning how to market. But you have to not only know how to market your office, but you've got to know how to market yourself. And so the old school ways of doing that, they really don't work anymore. And I see coaches, and everyone knows on my posts, I like to call them posers because it's ridiculous what's happening out there. But I still see these coaches touting things like reactivation systems. That doesn't work. I mean, I know some of you might do it, some of you might get some stuff, but you have to understand, on reactivation, people left you for a reason. And if for some reason your reactivation gets a few of them back, they're going to leave you again. That's just that's the person you have. They leave. So really, I don't think the idea is worth the time and the effort. And if your guy wants you to do it, I don't know. I just tell him forget it. Because I'm sure some people do get marginal results with it, but if you were to poll the entire profession, I think you'd find most people say to you, big waste of time, energy, and money, not worth doing. Mm-hmm. Another practice that's seen its day, I think, is the mall screening. I don't understand going to a mall and standing there and begging some dude with his hat turned sideways and his pants hanging down his ass to come into your practice. The guy doesn't even have a freaking job. And you're trying to get him into your office? I don't get it. And again, I know there's a lot of guys out there doing it, but why wouldn't it make more sense? Again, I'm going to refer back to corporate skeleton key. Go into a corporation where someone actually has a job. They may have some coverage still, and you can educate them before they even come into your office. I'll take that patient any day over some dude that's got nothing better to do than walk around a mall. Newspaper yellow pages, same thing, dead. Don't waste your time with that, but you all know that one. And the other thing is your answer for new ones isn't going to come in that new fancy gadget you just paid $16,000 for. That's not going to drive someone into your practice. And I'm going to cover this, I think. I'll get into this a little bit later as I go through this. So to get on top of the new patient game, there's some surefire things that you've got to do. One of the things that I recommend, if your budget allows it, and I know everyone out there can't do this, but I would recommend you hire a marketing director to market the practice for you. Our marketing director, Brad, the guy is incredible. He just drives people into the practice, which is really cool. And so what I'm thinking, if you can find a marketing guy named Brad, there's something in that name. He's just really good, good at marketing. So anyway, hire someone who has expertise in this area, and again, your practice is going to do really well. And I realize that's not in the budget for everybody. So then what every doc out there can do and what you must do, and this is critical, and really take the time to figure this out and write it down, what is your USP or your VAP? Okay, now some of you might be wondering, what the hell is that? Okay, well, what it is it's critical for business success. Okay, so what it is, it's your unique selling position or your value-added proposition that you add that makes someone want to buy from you. Now, here's where I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers, and I guess I'm pretty good at that from what people tell me. But I hope all of you realize that they are not buying chiropractic from you. Okay, that is not, guys. They can get chiropractic anywhere. I mean, to get to your office, they probably drive by 10 guys just to get to your place. I mean, it's not chiropractic they're buying. There's something else that they're buying, and there's a reason why they're driving by 10 offices to get to you. And what that is, it's your service and your attitude. People will pay more for a good service and attitude than they will for a good product. That's critical to understand. People will pay more for a good service and attitude than they will for a good product. And falling under that is your USP and your VAP. So again, that's your unique selling position or your value-added proposition. Do you guys know what yours is, those of you that are out there listening? And if you don't, write this down. Take a moment when we're done with this to figure out, why are people buying from you? Because that's the key. If you can figure out your true value or what's unique about you, then you know. So I know the guys that are doing Dr. Dane's 8-Week to Wellness. Talk about a huge value add. People will drive by a boatload of chiros to go see Dane in his offices because of the 8 weeks and how they're changing people's lives. And I'm sure you've seen that, Dan. You probably have people driving from all over the place just to come see you and do the 8 weeks to wellness because they know the difference it's going to make in their life, which, you know, they have no problem skipping those other guys. And here's the thing. You know, understand, guys, it's not price either. Because a guy could probably drive another 15 minutes or another 5 minutes and find a guy cheaper than you. So don't think it's price. You've got to understand it's the value that you're adding or the unique thing that you're doing that's going to set you apart. Now, if you're an Everest stock and you've been in the boot camp, you know your unique or your value add is the motion study x-rays, as well as the awareness you bring up on the day 2 to create so much value that the patient's actually really begging for care. I mean, the neat thing about the motion study that we train on at boot camp is there's nobody else in your town doing this. And so there's your uniqueness. There's the value. And the huge value of a motion study is that people are actually telling you, the doctor, where their subluxations are. You're just there to agree with them. Talk about an easy close and an easy sell. If a patient can come in and they can look at their x-ray and say, hey, doc, there's my subluxation, slam dunk, piece of cake. Now, Dane, I don't know if you may agree with me on this one. Do you find that you get most of your referrals when you wrap up the day 1?
Oh, absolutely. You know, as a matter of fact, Barry, one of my golden rules with day 1 is, here's how I know I've done a good job with day 1 and that we're moving in the right direction. If they say something to me, something like this, you know what, that was the most awesome exam, or that was awesome, I need to get my husband in here. Okay?
Right.
So that's kind of key for me. And I think you can tune into a person's energy to kind of know, you know, are you bringing them up the ladder, which we'll get to in just a moment, but absolutely.
Right. And so the thing is with that day 1 and the way that we form the questions is you're creating so much value that not only do they want to start care of themselves, they want other people they know to want to do it. And one important thing about sales and why people buy, people very early on in a relationship decide whether or not they want to buy from you. And then they spend the rest of the time they're with you justifying why they made that decision. And so as they're justifying whether or not they like you or they want to buy from you, when you get those immediate referrals, not only does that mean you're doing a great job, but the other thing it means is they just want reinforcement of why they justified to themselves why they should buy. So it's very important that you understand that. And so the VAP, again, to all of you guys, your value add or your uniqueness, take a moment after today and sit down and figure out what it is. And I don't mean this dismissively, but if all your answer is, well, it's chiropractic, well, then new patients is going to be a struggle for you because they ain't buying that. Another problem is not maximizing every opportunity. Like most docs out there have a family health history, and they make the patient fill it out, and then they take this thing and they toss it in the file and they never look at it again. Guys, that form right there is gold. That thing will make you so much money. You see, that form will give you the patient's immediate circle of influence and the problems those people have. Why wouldn't you mind that thing? And so that form right there is tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're losing. And so in boot camp what we do is we cover how to turn this simple form into a killer for new ones. And so the other thing that we want to cover at our one-day events, and we cover some of this at boot camp, is you want to replace your number 1 prospect. And people don't always understand what I mean by this. And so, and it's a huge mistake that docs make. And so what they do is they wait until a patient leaves care, right, or they drop out of care, and then they figure out, okay, I got to get a new one to replace that one that left. That is ass backwards. Don't do it that way. Understand, when you close a patient, you've just closed your number 1 prospect. Who's a better prospect for care in your office The guy that's sitting across from you or the guy that's walking through the mall? It's the guy sitting across from you. And so when you close that guy, the time to fill that new patient void is now, not 3 months from now when you're all finished with your care. So when someone walks in my clinic, I just don't think, oh, great, I got a new one. I think, okay, my number one prospect is sitting across from me, and I got to close him, and if I can close him, I can get 2, 3, 4, or 5 more. And if you can change your thinking to that, you will actively start to pursue the referrals, and you'll do what you need to do to replace the one you just closed. Replace them on the front end. Don't replace them on the back. And then finally, you got to know how to close. And the best and easiest way to attract a new patient is to close the ones that you get. And the only way you're going to increase your circle of influence is to get into other circles. All right? And so you do this by closing. Everest stocks, they close 90%. Imagine if you were closing 90% of your people. Imagine what that would do for you. Okay? You wouldn't have to worry about so much. But another key is you got to hang on to them. And that's another key that we talk about at Bootcamp. So I understand that docs are getting new ones, but most of them can't close the ones they get. That leads to frustration. And then the ones they do get, they can't hang on to, and we need to change that.
So that leads right into my next question, Barry, is why are chiropractors so bad at closing? Because, you were the first one to really bring this, and actually we keep this as a stat now, thanks to you and Dan, because we never did. We keep this as a current stat that we review at our staff meetings, and we hold ourselves accountable to that number. So, and by the way, I'm looking at a lot of other docs. We keep it on our 8 Weeks to Wellness docs now too, how many they close 8 Weeks to Wellness. And I see this as a huge problem across the board of getting people to understand the value to the point where they're willing to write a check for care. So why are chiropractors so bad at closing? And maybe you want to just go over the definition of what that is.
Well, before I get into let me get over the definition of what I say a close is. A close is exchanging something of value with value. That's the definition of a true close. And so I'm not going to get into the long thing about how I feel about people giving care away, because that just really pisses me off. But, you can't give away this care. But chiropractors are terrible closers because nobody taught them how to close. You see, we have to take a minute to look what's taught in this profession. And it's rampant in the seminars and from all the poser coaches out there. And all it is someone walks in your office, you beat them over the head with philosophy, green books, touchy-feely nonsense. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying all of that's bad stuff. What I'm saying is that's not what's going to make them close. And the numbers prove this to be true. We see 2% of the population, right, about that? Okay? Yep. 10 years ago, 2%. 20 years ago, 2%. It's ridiculous. We keep doing the same old shit over and over. It's just repackaged, and we wonder why our patient population as a profession is growing. It comes down to what I talk about when I do some of my talks. Chiropractors sell their patients what they want, not what the patient wants.
No doubt.
And so if you want to be a better closer and succeed, sell the patient what he wants.
No doubt.
And then educate him on what he could have. This is so important. Sell them what they want while educating them on what they could have. Don't sell them what you want to sell them. Yeah. So what happens is a patient comes in with headaches, we recite the green books and try to sell them on everything we do but headaches. It's stupid. It doesn't work, and it's killing the profession. Here's the news flash for everybody, and this will upset the posers. Not everyone is going to change their paradigm to wellness care just because you spent 15 minutes on a day one reciting chiropractic pearls to them. This is something they've probably held on to their entire life, and you've got the ego and to think that you're going to change them in 15 minutes? Sure. You're freaking high, man. It ain't going to happen. And so it's absurd to think this, but that's what's being taught, and it's killing the profession. And so, just real quick as an aside, the poser coach is giving you the secrets to the wellness practice, because that's what everyone wants from right now, right? Wellness. These guys, they didn't do it themselves. They were practicing 30 years ago. And when they were practicing, insurance covered everything. I remember when I got out of school. Walk in the door, it's covered. So people came in because care was basically free. No wonder they were closing everyone. It was free. So, and if they're so good at what they're talking about in terms of this wellness model and paradigm and all that, well, then why aren't they out there doing it? That really drives me nuts. I kind of veered off point, sorry. But anyway, we spent 2 days teaching you how to close and how to close corrective care that is prepaid without giving it away. We need to be better at selling our product. If we're truly going to change the belief system of this world, regarding health, we need to start closing more than 2%, because this profession is not a 2% of the population profession. This profession is 100% of the population profession, and we better start making it that, because we're not going to survive at 2%.
No doubt. You know, one of the things I always say, Barry, is that people, and you may want to write this down if you're taking notes, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's not about what you care about. It's about what they care about. And I think so many chiropractors want to get across what they care about, which is their philosophy, and they never tap into what that patient cares about, which is the reason they came into your office. And one of the things that you taught me, Barry, is close people where they're at, close people what they want, and then bring them to what they could possibly have. And that was just a great, almost like a visual picture in my mind. Is, yeah, you know what, you got to meet people where they are. You've got to close them based on what their needs are. And then when you establish that relationship, when they do know how much you care, you open up an opportunity to show them what's available to them in chiropractic.
Sure. I mean, you got month after month to educate these people on the big picture. You don't have to do it in 15 minutes.
So, Dan, I have a question for you, buddy. I want to bring you into the conversation because this is one of the things that you taught me. And I was reviewing my notes last night just to get prepared for the webinar today. And this, I remember it highlighted and I underlined this. But why do so many doctors worry about being liked? Because I think this is killing our profession instead of being respected by their patients.
Well, you know, I guess a lot of chiropractors out there think that being respected and being liked are the same thing. This is the problem, is that docs that want to be liked, they think that if patients like them, it's going to be the reason why a patient will buy and stay, because you're so likable. There's a distinct difference between being liked and being respected, and I have to define this because all too often I speak with clients on the phone, and their desperation to be liked comes through so obviously. No wonder the patient across from them is looking at them with a little bit of a tilted head and a little bit of skepticism. You know, listen, being respected is not from about how much you know. Being respected does not come from how many letters after your name you have. Being respected doesn't have to do with your charisma or your good looks, because just look at me and Barry, we're a motley crew, right?
Well, you're the ugly one.
Yeah, screw you. Hey, Dan, can we mute him just for my sake? I mean, we can't all be.
What was the first thing when you guys sent those pictures? I'm like, who the hell photoshopped these damn pictures, man? I've never seen you guys look so.
A ton of photoshopping.
Jesus, man.
So respect comes from understanding what your patient wants, and then being in tune with that want, and then giving that patient what they want in a step-by-step manner. That's where respect comes from. Okay, you know, I had a client just the call the other day, and you know, he's all talking about himself. And if you're on the line with me, I appreciate you letting me go over this. And he's talking about his football years and how many injuries he's had and how he played Division II. And so my response to him was, let me ask you something. Who the fuck cares? They don't care. They don't care about you. Listen, they're in their office not because you play Division II football, right? They're in your office because they're looking for you as the solution to their problem. And the only way to gain respect, guys, this is key, is to give them what they came in for. At the same time, educating them on what they ultimately could have. So write this down, docs. You want to be respected. Period. Not liked. By the way, the more you're respected, the more you're going to be liked. Case in point, everyone knows Barry is just a friggin' dick. Okay, let's just put it out there. He's a dick, and he admits it. Everyone knows it, and I know more than anyone else because I pretty much married to the guy. If he can have a monster practice, turning over multiple new patients a month, closing them at 94%, have a PV of over 70, 80, 90, 100, okay? And for a guy who knows it is clear that he's not likable, that means that anyone out there with even a little bit of likability can blow Barry out of the water. I hope that's enough evidence for anyone out there that thinks that you need to be likable instead of be respected. But in reality, you're pathetic. Sorry to say it, but that's what it is.
And Dan, if you think back to the people, like I think back to the people that I really respect, have respected my 44 years on this planet, some coaches that coached me in wrestling and football, some of the teachers that I had through school, my sister, my wife, some of the people I truly respect. It's because they held me to a higher standard and didn't let me bullshit myself. And made me step up to my own greatness, and that wasn't always easy, and sometimes I swear at them, sometimes right in front of their face, sometimes behind their back, but you know what, they made me a better human being, and that's what I feel that you guys are doing for this profession. You're not letting chiropractors and poser coaches continue to bullshit themselves while they still, they can't even pay their payroll, and they can't even go on vacation with their family.
Yeah, amen. I'm really tired of chiropractors living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm just going to take an aside here for a second because I'm really pissed off about this, and Barry and I were talking about this over the weekend because we just saw all these poser coaches posting just bullshit, and I'm afraid because, listen, we need chiropractors to be rich. We need chiropractors to be wealthy because we need to accumulate those resources to truly make the changes and put our money into our values. Unfortunately, when we have a whole profession, the majority of them living paycheck to paycheck, really in survival mode, just looking to pay the bills, it's no wonder why our profession is where it is right now, because we just don't have the leverage to do it. So one of our underlying tones here is, when we talk, if you ever talk to me and Barry, is we require that our colleagues, you, the profession, have money in the bank, where you don't have to worry if you didn't have a day with no new patients,
No doubt. And Dan, I just took my son out skiing to Utah to meet my brother, and we had 4 awesome days. I bonded with my son and my brother. But more importantly, you know what? I had a patient of mine, a young kid, who's their whole family, the mom, the grandmom, aunts and uncles, they're all patients of mine. They have been for years. And his aunt and uncle were avid skiers, as was this kid. He's 14 years old, same age as my son. And his aunt and uncle were killed in an automobile accident back in September. And he's obviously devastated, as is the whole family. But he was a big skier, and now that they're kind of gone, they don't take him skiing. And his grandmother was telling me this. And 2 weeks before I went skiing, I called up his mom and dad and asked if I could take this kid skiing with us because he's the same age as my son. But the important part was I stroked the whole check. You know why? Because it was the right thing to do, and because I had the money in my bank account to be able to take this kid out and show him that there's people that care about him and have a great time. So, being successful and having money in the bank allows you to do things where you gain people's respect. So I
think I learned this. I think I learned this from you, Dane. I think you said this, is that the reason you want to be wealthy is to put your values to work, and I think that's so true.
Absolutely, and put my money to work to where it helps other people. So, Barry, don't spend a lot of time on this side because I think we covered it. But what does PVA really mean, and what does it reflect when somebody has a low PVA?
Well, a low PVA usually means you didn't educate them properly and bring them up the ladder to see that what they need to do to truly correct this thing, not just feel better. And really what you did is you sold them chiropractic, and they bought chiropractic, but they don't own what you do. And if they don't own what you do, they'll leave you, and that's a big difference. A lot of people think just because they closed it, they did it, they didn't. You have to make that patient own what you've sold them, and that's what's critical about having a killer day 1, day 2. So that's the quick answer if you want the quick answer on that.
And so how can chiropractors ethically, I have my answer to this, but how do you think they can ethically, and I did put that word in there if you notice, ethically increase their PVA?
Well, yeah, the funny thing with the word ethically, I don't think you ever need to put that in, because I think every single one of us needs to 100% of the time operate out of a place of ethics. And if you're ever operating out of ethics, no matter what success you have, it will be short-lived. So
Sure.
To me, everything that we do with Everest is based on ethics, because you can't go to bed at night if you're unethical. But anyway, back to your question. One really easy way. Do you ask me how to increase PVA?
Yeah.
Is that what you asked me?
Yeah, sure.
Real simple. Put it in your plan.
Mm-hmm. Right. Close more people. Yeah.
Yeah. Close the person and say, "This is how many times I'm going to see you, and now pay me." It's that simple. It's not difficult, guys. It's if you need 36 visits over 3 months, that's what you're going to do. Your PVA automatically goes up because you brought the patient up the ladder that they want to buy from you. So that's a real simple one. Just put it in your frickin' plan.
And I want to address this because I know I know the two of you, and I know a lot of chiropractors are very successful who lose themselves in the process of becoming a successful chiropractor. And, having 3 generations of chiropractor, the middle generation of our family, namely my dad and my uncle, had great killer practices, but they're both divorced, and, their family life wasn't always in balance. And I bring this up every time I talk. I've made a lot of poor decisions in my life, but I've learned from my decisions. And one thing, being a chiropractor for 22 years, is I'm more proud of my relationship with my wife and my children than anything, and my sister than anything in my life. I would lay down in traffic for those people. So I don't want people to lose themselves and say, well, you know what, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort to have $1 million practice, and that's going to divert energy from other areas of my life. So how do you guys maintain that balance between having a very highly successful practice and doing what it takes to manage your people, to do your marketing, to make sure all the stats are getting done, and to have a great family life?
You want me to take that one, Dan?
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it first. I mean, the thing is my motto is I work to live. I don't live to work. And if anyone knows me and Barry, we really don't want to do any more work than we absolutely need to. But for me, I want to make sure that my practice is working systematically so that I can predict my outcomes and I can predict my results. Because in the end of the day, the worst thing, and I know you guys are feeling this, is that you spend a Tuesday or a Wednesday in the office, and by the time you're ready to close up shop, you are just so emotionally drained, where you go home and you barely have enough to do what you got to do at home, be a husband, be a wife, be a father, be a mother, because you gave everything into your practice for that day. Now let me tell you something. I have the results that I like in my office, but the way I have it set up, where the systems that I have in place, does not require me to always be emotionally invested 24/7 in my office. So if you really want to know my secret, it's that I set it up, I measure it, I stat it, I tweak it, and I keep doing it to a point where I'm just literally working on autopilot. And I think the bootcamp grads understand what I'm talking about, because the way we teach the day 1, day 2 is so systematic to a fault almost, where you're just on autopilot. And I'll be the first to confess today that sometimes my front desk has to tell me, is this a day 1 or a day 2 as I'm walking back into the office. I mean, and then once I start with my day 1, it's just gone. And when I do my day 2, it just happens autopilot. I get the result next, and then go home and love my family.
Well, it's funny, Dan, you're talking about the systems, and that's everything. It got me thinking. I was kind of daydreaming as you were telling me that, because when I was running the 24 clinics in 6 states, I was done with work by 1 o'clock. I mean, 24 clinics, and so I started at 9, and I took lunch. But, the systems that I was using for those 24 offices are the ones that we teach people at boot camp. Problem is, most docs have no system.
Right.
And so what you've got to do is you've got to have that system in place, which, you're making me think. I got to put something together so guys can know how to do multiple offices. But anyway,
you do multiple offices by figuring out how to do one systematically and not wing it every single day. I think that's what we're trying to say here, is that if you show up to the office and just think about winging it, you got problems, because you're going to burn out. And like Dane said, you're going to lose yourself in the process.
And so, yeah, I was just going to say, Barry, think about my motto with my practice and my life now has become that which gets scheduled gets done. So I recognized early, not early, but maybe 10 years into my career, that I could have a really good golf game, or I could have a great practice and a great family, and I couldn't have all 3. That was just me personally. I'm not saying other people can't do that. But, when I look at my life in terms of what needs to get scheduled, there's some important things, whether it be my family or my practice, that I schedule every single week. We had a staff meeting yesterday. I scheduled time with my children and my wife. Just working on those systems and refining those systems, working on my day 1, day 2. That's why I love going to boot camp. It gave me a scheduled time to work on that important aspect of my practice, communication, closing people. So I think it's blocking this out and say, what are the priorities in your life? Are there 5 or 10? And then how do you schedule around those priorities so that each one of those things that need to get done, whether it's your clinic, whether it's your economics, whether it's your financial, your family model, that those things are being attended to.
Cool.
So let's just move on because we have something I want to get to, and Dan, I'm going to pass controls over to you. But before I do, I want you to talk about boot camp. And I've been to 2 boot camps. I've spoken at a couple of the one days, and I'm just going to give you guys a shameless plug. Your seminar, I just got tingles when I went to say this. And by the way, if you've heard me speak before, I tell you when I get tingles or chills in my body, it's because that's God saying to me that I'm about to tell you something really important. So you need to listen to this. This has been by far, and I've been to many, many seminars, this has by far been the best seminar. It's not a seminar, it's a boot camp, and I apologize for not making the distinction, but it's been the best investment of my money and my time coming to boot camp. And some of the things that I personally learned, and remember I told you I was going through my notes, was the concept of minimizing. So, and I don't think we have time to touch on it here, Dan, but suffice it to say that was a huge breakthrough for me when I realized how much I freaking minimize with people. It's not so bad. Well, kind of, sort of. I did it when I started this damn webinar. Barry, you taught me the concept of moving people up the ladder. This was such a great visual for me because what you taught me is I'm standing at the bottom of the ladder, and at the top of the ladder, top rung is where a patient closes. And what people are trying to do is take that bottom rung and leap from that bottom rung when they come in, they do their consult, to the top rung and close. And they've got every rung in between is either effed up or it's not even there, and they wonder why they can't close. I mean, there was so much value that I got out of boot camp. But, Dan, maybe what you can do is just expound on this. I'm going to change presenters and make you the presenter and just talk about boot camp for a couple minutes.
Yeah, sure. Hold on, show my screen. Here we go. Let me just get this set up first. Okay. Well, before I get into about bootcamp, what I want to do is I want to give everyone on the line some true plug-and-play nuggets that you can actually use on this afternoon shift if you have a new one. So for all the guys and the ladies on the line, please take out a piece of paper and just start writing this down, okay?
Dan, can you maximize your screen?
Yeah, I'm not ready to do this.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yet, so I'm just going to do this first. So listen, one of the biggest things that we see as a huge mistake in a day one is allowing your patients to minimize. Now, minimizing is something that your new patients will do because they don't want to truly admit that the problem that they have is truly a bigger problem than they think. Because if they have to admit that, well, guess what? They're going to have to invest time, energy, and money. That's something they're not really ready to do yet. Why? Because you have not built enough rapport or built enough value for what you have to provide. So, first of all, I want to just backtrack. Dane, first of all, for a guy like Dane to give us a plug like that is absolutely so humbling, because understand, a guy like Dane, he has been through the ringer a couple of times. He has seen everything out in this profession, and the fact that you totally dig our stuff, Dane, I mean, I'm just totally just so awesome. I'm just incredibly grateful that a guy like you, appreciates this stuff, and I think it's mainly because you know all the bullshit out there. But anyway, the minimizing things that a patient will say first off the bat, and I'll give you this, is when you ask a patient how long they've been having a problem, they will typically give you what's called a come and go. So what they'll say is, well, doc, it's really not that bad, because you know what? It only happens when I do this, or I've been having it on and off for 20 years. It's really not that bad because I only get it when I do this. Now I want to let you know that is classified under the come and go minimize. This is what a patient does to not admit to themselves or to you that their problem is truly as bad as it seems. So let's just dissect this just for 1 second. Chest pain, when you're looking at it from a heart disease patient, does chest pain come and go, Dane?
If you're a heart patient, absolutely it does.
Yes, absolutely. Does that make the heart disease any less real, Dane?
No, not until they have the heart attack, right?
Exactly. So listen, docs, we all know this. Just because a problem comes and goes does not necessarily mean that the problem is less of a problem. It just means that it comes and goes. So you have to address that. You can't let that slide, because if you let that slide, they're going to say, okay, well, this guy's buying my stuff. I've had, subluxation probably my 30 years, but it comes and goes, not a big deal. You have to address it. So this is how you address it. Start writing. Anytime someone tells me something comes and goes, it concerns me. Because it means that you have a physical problem that's made worse by something that you're doing or you're not doing. And then you continue with your consultation. By the way, this is not a conversation. This is you as the doctor expressing concern about something that they said. If you don't know our style, we don't take bullshit, and that includes from our patients. So if someone tries to admit to me that something come and going is less of a problem than something that is consistent, I call them on it. And this is a very non-confront way that you could express concern and let them know that you're not going to get away with this bullshit from me today. Okay? So that was a little nugget for you guys. So let me just finish up with a lot of questions on the line about what Bootcamp is. Well, first of all, I want to let you know that that we are all still in the game, and the stuff that we teach is not theory. It's absolutely our daily lives. And the chances are that you've tried a whole bunch of practice-building seminars and tools and apps and meditation studies, trips to chiropractic retreats, and, of course, coaching, and you really haven't had the success that you expected. Dan, is my screen coming through?
Yeah, I can see it great.
Cool. So, listen, what I'm about to share with you right now is going to piss off a whole bunch of chiropractic coaches and management groups out there, and frankly, I don't really give a shit. Chiropractic coaching absolutely effing sucks. Okay, if you guys have been around for a while, you know that the bottom line never changes. All you get is pumped up full of just stuff, and you're just left where you were before. Coaching doesn't work because if it did, we'd be seeing more than 2% of the population, and our offices will be flooded, and we'd be rolling around in cash, and we wouldn't have well-intentioned young doctors struggling to make ends meet. And after 100 years, our great profession wouldn't still be the red-headed stepchild of the healthcare industry. So everyone say this with me. I know you can't hear me and I can't hear you, but let's just say this together. That's bullshit. And you know what? It absolutely is. It doesn't help that every day there's always the next big thing that's supposed to change the industry. But in the end, turns out to be more hyped up nonsense that leaves you more confused than before. And let me give you an example. Just over the weekend, Barry and I saw this. This was on a management group's webpage. By doing management group and focusing on the 5-year plan, Dr. X saw 60 new patients, 575 visits, and over $50,000 in services in the month of August. Listen, if you guys run a business, you got to see all the holes in this little testimonial.
No doubt.
Either it was totally made up, or if this is true, which they should not be advertising. Let's do this math. This poor doc has a retention of 38 visits as a PVA. And check this out. He's only getting $24 a visit.
It's going broke. He's living in his mom's basement.
Yeah.
Amen. You know what? Listen, docs, you have to be keen on this stuff. And the only reason that we picked this out is because we keep statistics.
And that was services, Dan, not collection.
That's services. It's not collection.
Christ.
Yeah. So if the typical collection percentage is like, say, 70% on a good day, so he's going home with less than 50. Here's another one. Same group. We were really tempted to name it because we need these freaking guys out of the profession. Seriously, they're hurting everybody. And Dr. X had 16% of her patients scheduled for wellness care.
Ugh.
What the fuck? They're actually advertising that only 16% of their patients actually continued after their corrective care program. Bullshit. Listen, it's time to end this frustration. And we got to get, and the insanity, and we got to get back to the basics, okay? That's the bottom line. That's why Barry and I started Everest Coaching, to end the confusion. And
hey, what's that? You'll pay.
Yeah.
The donger will pay.
Yeah, right. We got to teach every business the basics on how to sell. That's 3 questions I have for you. Are you ethical, compassionate, and principled? That should be a resounding yes. Do you get the results with your patients under your care? That should be a resounding yes as well. And you and your staff provide the best possible service? Well, you got to say, heck yeah. I got 4 more questions for you. These are a bit tougher. Do you see more than 14 new patients a month? Do you close more than 80% of your new patients? Do you have a greater than 70 PVA? Do you have a greater than a $4,000 case average? First of all, if you don't know what those are, first problem. Number 2, if you answer no to the last 3 questions, greater than 3,000 case average, greater than 60 PVA or 70 PVA, close more than 80% of your new patients. If you answer no to any one of those 3 questions, just shit or get off the pot. Just understand that your day 1 and your day 2 suck. Okay? Just admit it. It's okay. The truth about new patients is that you really don't need as many as you think. Because wouldn't it be nice if new patients were all about growth and not just survival?
Hey,
day
Dan.
one, day two is, yeah.
Can I say something really quick? I think it's really important to say something.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Back to that stat with 60 new patients. With the model that you've taught and what we do in our practice, you send me 60 new patients, and I'm paying everybody's mortgage on this webinar next month. So that's the truth. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
if you're seeing 60 new patients and you can't make a go, I mean, you better get to boot camp.
Yeah, and there's a serious problem there if that's happening, Dane. And I appreciate you seeing that, because and most people don't understand is that the day one, day two is the most neglected, because you think it's a new patient problem, you think it's a staff problem, you think it's every other problem except for you or your day one and day two, and that has to stop. And that's why we came up with Everest, because we needed to plug the hole in the biggest weakness that most doctors have, and that's on the day one, day two. So for those of you who are wondering, this is what you do, or what you get. You get two full days of the Everest day one, day two training. Again, thanks for making the distinction there, Dane, because it is a training. It is not a seminar where it's just one-sided. We're going to be in your face. We're going to be having you role play, and we're not going to let up until you get it down. You're not in a room with 300 people. That's why these things sell out, because we limit it to only X amount of people depending on how much help we have in the space that we have. The next one that we're having is going to be in Philly, in Newtown, Pennsylvania, at Dr. Dane's office. And I can't wait for that, because I want people to see what a true wellness practice looks like, and that's Dane's. I don't care what anyone says. We buy lunch and coffee. We drill, role play, ask questions. Now, if you suck, we'll tell you. But by the end, we're gonna hug you. Well, at least I will, because Barry doesn't hug. I'm gonna buy you a beer or a gin, whatever your liquid of choice is, and then we send you home with a slap on your ass. Okay, and that's how we roll. The role playing, the drilling, and the whys and the concepts is so critical you understand that, because we want to make sure that you're not just dependent on a coach. We want to give you the tools so that you can fish, so that you figure out how to do this consistently and persistently for your whole career, and not just something short-lived over the course of months. You're going to get a manual. We have everything written down, so that way you can study on your own, and so that we cover all the different ways people learn. You get the famous X-ray report of findings. Dudettes, you just understand that this X-ray report of finding is the best in the profession. I don't care what anyone says. This is the X-ray report of findings that will have your patients telling you where their subluxations are, so it's so real to them instead of a wrinkleological report. Finally, we bring guest speakers. And listen, I want to let you know that Bootcamp is not a live commercial. You're not going to be sitting through a whole dozen speakers trying to sell you their stuff. Our guest speakers are always there to add value to the trainings. And it's also a nice break, because after a while, you're going to want to punch me and Barry in the nose. Well,
more me.
Barry in the balls. Okay?
Yeah, I was going to say, because Barry may not hug you, but I promise you he'll slap your ass.
Exactly. Right.
Well, depends what you look like.
Metaphorically, he's going to slap your ass.
Okay.
well, literally too. We've seen. So the next one we're doing with Dane, and Dane, I got to tell you something. Dane is one of those guys we totally resonate with, because he's real, just like us. That we don't take the bullshit, and he's literally doing what he's teaching. And I got to tell you, that has so much value for you guys out there when you're looking for people to look up to and to mentor with. You got to go to the horse's mouth and hook up with people who are actually doing what you want to be doing. And I don't want you to take our word for it. I mean, if you look at all of our Facebook posts and all of the stuff that is on there, you'll see that this stuff is for real. You got real people making real comments and testimonials about how our stuff works and what's great about it. You got Brad Glowacki, our friend in California, that's just saying seriously great results in a short amount of time, short being the key. And of course, Dane plugs here, you got to do this boot camp. So the question is, how much does boot camp cost? Well, before I tell you how much it costs, I want to make sure I let you know how much it doesn't cost. If you go to the typical high-volume coaching management firms out there, which all the coaches are out of the game, over the course of 13 or 14 months, you will have spent over $11,000. You're not going to spend that with us. Another online-based coaching group, I added it all up. It's just short of $9,000 for those people. You're not going to pay that. And then you have the McDonald's version of my chiropractic coaching online. This guy does it all from his little bodega in Hawaii. Oh shit! I didn't say Hawaii. I just said an island. And if you add up all his shit, it's less than $3,000. And God knows when the last time he saw an actual new patient. You're not going to pay that either. So just to review: 2 full days of the Everest training, role-playing, drilling, the manual, the PVA building. Oh, we're not doing the workshops anymore. Sorry, I left that in. All form scripts, the report of findings, the X-ray report of findings, Q&A throughout the whole entire boot camp. In other words, you're not going to be just, sitting there hoping you can say something. We serve you coffee on both days, so you're going to need it. Lunch served on both days, and then giveaways from our guests and our partners. And you get all of that for only $18.95. That is Chiropractic's birthday. So if you think that's a lot, it's only $5 a day, okay? A double cap a day for me, or half a lunch, because we all know we can't buy lunch for $5 these days. So a couple of objections. People say that's too much dough, dude. Well, compared to what? If you could invest $18.95 and then triple that on Tuesday, which a lot of our Everest stocks do, you're good. You need time to talk to your spouse? Well, I would too if I were you. Talk to her, make sure she understands the value and what you're getting. And if you need time to think about it, well, you could think about it, but you'll be in the same place after you think about it than you are today. So shit or get off the pot. Do something. Invest in something. Invest in yourself. Do the day 1, day 2 training. We also have 1-day event, which is not a boot camp. Barry, when is that again?
June 15th and July 20th, Orange County and Chicago, respectively.
Got it. So you can hook us up there. It is not a boot camp, just a heads up. It is a seminar where it's still an awesome thing, but you'll be able to see that on our website. So that's all I got. I'm going to change this back to Dane.
And while you're doing that, Dan, just a couple of quick points. First of all, if you guys don't see the potential for this to invest in yourself, I'm willing to give you a money back guarantee because I believe in this so much. You come to this boot camp, you invest in it. If you can look me in the eyes after the 2 days and say it wasn't worth the $18.95, I'll frickin' write you a check on the spot. That's how much I believe in. And obviously they're not paying me to say that.
No,
but I ain't giving you $1,800.
Yeah, well, I just know in my heart, But by the way, you come spend some time in our office and meet my staff. See how our practice runs. That's worth the $18.95. Just seeing how a $1 million practice runs, guys, and we're going to be doing some really cool stuff with you guys. So, please learn to invest in yourself. I just thought this was an awesome webinar today. The other thing I thought of that I want everybody to do is go to, these ideas and concepts that we're talking about, Barry and Dan are regularly talking about on their Facebook page. So go to the Everest Coaching Facebook page, like it, get involved in it. I'm constantly commenting on it. I'm constantly learning from it. It's a great group of doctors, so that's a way to kind of keep in touch with what's happening when the seminars are, when the 1 days and the boot camps are. All right. So I'm just going to wrap up. And then the other thing I wanted to just briefly mention is that Barry is also going to be speaking because I was just really wanted Barry to come and train our docs, our 52 8 weeks wellness docs on closing properly because, if you can't close a chiropractic case, you ain't closing an 8 weeks to wellness case when you add in all the wellness component. In our office, 8 weeks to wellness is $2,700, and most people are coming out of pocket for that. So Barry's going to be speaking at our event that we're doing May 10th and 11th on 8 weeks to wellness if you have any interest in coming and learning more about what we're doing in reference to our wellness program.
And real quick, Dane, I'm going to be talking about, if they do want to come out to that, these specific steps to becoming a better closer.
Awesome.
A step-by-step way they can do it. So.
Well, awesome, guys. We finished up right on time. I have 1:59. You guys are just awesome. I really wish that we could have left time at the end for questions, but we don't, and we have 100 people on the line, so I'm not even going to attempt to field questions. What I will do is tell you that we'll start doing these regularly because I think the discussion today was well worth it. What I would love for you guys to do is please, as a favor to me, go onto the Everest Facebook page, and make a comment about today. I would love to get your feedback. I know Barry and Dan would love to get your feedback too about the webinar today. Was the information valuable? Just so we can know what you want to hear about. We really are here to help you guys. So let us know how we can help you. So on behalf of Barry and Dan, I look forward to seeing you at Philly Boot Camp. And Dan, Barry, I'll leave the last words to you guys.
I'm going to close with Dane. Thank you so much for hosting us. Always a pleasure working with you, my friend.
No problem.
Yeah, it was awesome, Dan. I really appreciate it, and just look forward to seeing you in April.
Yeah, and it was recorded, guys, so if you have interest, go to the Facebook page and maybe just post a comment who wants it, or email me. You can email me at drdane, D-R-D-A-N-E, at 8ww.com. So it's drdane at 8ww.com. Email me if you want a copy of today's webinar. All right, guys, take care.
We'll make that available, too. Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right, buddies. Bye.